Mom insisted. You turned out fine though. While my medication alarm buzzed loudly in my pocket. For a second I couldn't tell which was louder. The shrill, cheap default ringtone or the rush of blood suddenly pounding in my ears. The phone vibrated against my thigh like it was trying to punch its way out of my jeans. I fumbled for it under the table, nearly knocking over my mug, coffee sloshing up the sides. Mom's eyes flicked down to my hand and then back up to my face, that tight little smile already forming, like she could see the comeback building behind her teeth. I hit snooze with a thumb that felt slightly numb and left the phone on my lap, screen still glowing through the denim. We were sitting in her kitchen on a damp Sunday afternoon, the kind of gray where it never fully becomes daytime. The fluorescent light over the sink hummed faintly, giving everything this sickly yellow tint. Mom had the window cracked for fresh air, but it just let in the smell of wet dirt and someone's laundry detergent from next door. The radio on the counter was playing some soft rock station she's sworn allegiance to since 1998. My untouched toast was getting cold on a chipped plate between us, butter congealing at the edges. Mom pulled her cardigan tighter around herself as if the conversation was a draft. That's my alarm, I said, stupidly, stating the obvious. My voice sounded too loud in my own ears. For my meds. I figured, she said. In that way that meant she hadn't figured anything at all. She just wanted to sound unbothered. She took a sip of her tea, pinky slightly up. You can turn it off. You don't need to make a show of it. I wasn't, I said. I could feel my shoulders creeping up toward my ears, that old turtle reflex. I have to take them on time. She waved a hand, the way she used to when I tried to explain a movie plot she didn't care about. I'm just saying. You turned out fine though. We must have done something right. She smiled like she'd landed a good joke. The thing is, if you'd walked in at that exact moment without any context, you'd probably think she was just a slightly blunt mom with bad timing. That's why I'm writing this, I guess. Because this all sounds so small when I try to explain it, and then I start wondering if I'm actually the ungrateful, oversensitive child she's always accused me of being. I'm 28. I was officially diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder 6 months ago, after what we are politely calling a bit of a breakdown at work, but what really involved me sobbing on the bathroom floor because my manager asked if I could send an email sooner rather than later. I started medication, an antidepressant in the mornings, an anti-anxiety med as needed. The alarm is so I don't forget the first one. I've missed it enough times to know that forgetting feels like someone slowly turning down the brightness on my entire life over the course of a week. I didn't tell my parents right away. I grew up in a house where "we don't need pills for moods" was basically a family motto. Anytime mental health came up on TV, my dad would make some comment about snowflakes, and my mom would say, "In my day, we just got on with it." So I kept the diagnosis to myself like a weird little secret pet. It wasn't until last week in therapy that my therapist suggested I might want to try telling them. Not because I owed them anything, but because hiding it was clearly eating at me. Maybe you could share a small piece of your reality, she said, tapping her pen on her notebook. And see how they handle it. That might give you some data. Data. I liked that word. Less emotional than validation. More manageable. So I decided to try. I texted Mom and asked if I could come over for coffee. She replied almost immediately, "Of course, sweetheart. I'm always here for you." Reading that, for a second, I believed her. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say in the car, parked outside their house, fingers clenched around the steering wheel. I was going to keep it short and factual. I've been struggling with my mental health. I'm seeing a therapist and taking medication now, and it's helping. That was the script. In reality, by the time I actually got to the kitchen table, my stomach churning from the smell of her instant coffee, the script had fallen apart. I mumbled something about having a rough time and talking to someone. The words medication and diagnosis got stuck somewhere behind my teeth. Mom listened with that concerned face that never quite reaches her eyes, nodding in all the right places. Then she said, "Everyone gets sad sometimes." I said, "It's more than that." She said, "Well, I cried in the bathroom at work once too, you know?" I said, "I'm on medication." That's when she blinked, like I'd switched the channel without warning. "Medication?" she repeated. "And that's how we got here," to her saying, "You turned out fine though," as my phone vibrated like a trapped insect against my leg. "Fine is relative," I said finally, because sarcasm is my emotional support animal. Came out flatter than I meant it to. She gave me the skeptical look, the same one she used to give the scale when it didn't show the number she wanted. "You have a job," she said, counting on her fingers. "You have your own place. You didn't get pregnant as a teenager or end up on drugs. We must have done something right." The more she talked, the more I could feel my body doing that thing it does whenever I'm backed into a familiar corner. Palms sweating, knee bouncing under the table, jaw clenching so hard my molars ache later. It's like my nervous system recognizes the pattern before my brain does. "Do you remember when I was 13 and I wouldn't go to school for a week?" I asked. The words tumbled out before I could decide whether this was a good idea. She frowned. "You had a little phase," she said. "All teenagers do that." "It wasn't a phase," I said. "I was having panic attacks. In the bathroom. Every morning. I would throw up and my hands would go numb." She shrugged, but her shoulders were stiff. "You were dramatic," she said. "You were always a bit intense." That word, intense. For years, that was the label for anything I felt above a lukewarm level. Excited? Too intense. Upset? Too intense. Quiet at dinner after a bad day? What's with the intensity? When I was a kid, I had these stomach aches all the time. I'd curl up on the couch, holding my middle, sure my appendix was about to explode. Mom would put her hand on my forehead for half a second, declare I didn't have a fever, and tell me to get dressed for school. "It's just nerves," she'd say. But nerves to her meant something you ignored, like a fly in the room. I learned pretty quickly that if blood wasn't visible and bones weren't sticking out, I was fine. There was one time in 8th grade, though, when a teacher actually noticed. Mrs. Kent, my English teacher, pulled me aside after class and asked if everything was okay at home. I burst into tears so fast even I was surprised. I told her I couldn't sleep, that I felt like something was wrong all the time, that sometimes my heart would pound so hard in class I'd think I was dying. She rubbed my shoulder and said she was going to call my parents so they could get me some help. That night, Mom stood in my doorway with her arms crossed, phone still in her hand. "Mrs. Kent called," she said. Her voice had that tight, brittle quality. "Telling people you're father and I don't look after you properly, is that what you want now?" "I didn't say that," I said, wiping my face with the heel of my hand. "You made us sound like monsters," she snapped. "We give you food and a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us? Crying to your teacher like we're neglecting you." Dad, from the living room, shouted, "If she doesn't want to live here, she can find somewhere else to sleep." I was 13. I apologized. I promised I'd never say anything like that again. We never talked about it after that. When Mrs. Kent asked me quietly a week later if I'd gotten to see someone, I said, "Yeah, my mom talked to me. I'm fine now," with the big fake smile I'd already perfected. So yeah, I turned out fine. I turned out into someone who didn't trust her own brain, who assumed any discomfort was a personal failure, who quietly had panic attacks in bathroom stalls, and then washed her face and went back to class like nothing happened. In college, things came to a head. I remember a night in my dorm sophomore year where I sat on the floor, back against the bed, staring at a bottle of Tylenol. I wasn't quite at the place of making a plan, but I was definitely at the place of wondering how many it would take to not wake up. My roommate came in drunk, saw my face, and sobered up instantly. She sat with me until the sun came up and dragged me to the campus counseling center the next morning. I did 3 sessions. Then my parents found out because I had to move some money from the account they could see to pay a fee, and Mom demanded to know what this charge was. When I told her, she went quiet in that scary way. "We didn't raise you to be weak," she said finally. After that, every time I thought about going back, I heard her voice. So I didn't. I white-knuckled my way through the rest of college instead, then through my first job, then through a pandemic. The thing that finally cracked me wasn't some huge tragedy. It was standing in the frozen aisle of the grocery store 6 months ago, holding a bag of peas, and realizing I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt like I wasn't one minor inconvenience away from collapsing. I left the cart, walked out, and sat in my car shaking. I called my doctor from the parking lot. All of that flooded through my head in the half-second after Mom said, "You turned out fine though." "I tried to kill myself in college," I heard myself say. The words slipped out like they'd been waiting on the tip of my tongue for years. Her eyes snapped to mine. "Don't say things like that," she hissed automatically, glancing toward the doorway like Dad might materialize there. "It's true," I said. My hands were trembling, so I curled them into fists in my lap. I didn't, obviously, but I thought about it. A lot. She stared at me for a long beat. Then she shook her head. "Everyone has dark thoughts sometimes," she said. "I had dark thoughts when I was your age. You kids act like you invented sadness." It was like trying to plug a USB in the wrong way over and over. No matter which angle I approached from, it wouldn't connect. My phone buzzed again in my lap. The snooze was up. Another insistent reminder. Take your meds. Take care of yourself, even if your mother refuses to acknowledge they're needed. "Can you turn that thing off?" she snapped. "It's giving me a headache." I pulled it out and swiped the notification away, then opened the tiny orange bottle with shaking fingers. One white pill in the palm, chased with cold coffee. Mom watched, eyes narrowed. "So what is that supposed to do exactly?" she asked. "Make you happy?" "It's not a happy pill," I said, tired. It helps. It makes it so I can get out of bed, go to work, not feel like my chest is going to explode all the time." "You never seemed like that," she said. "You were always such a good kid." "No, I was a silent kid. There's a difference." "I didn't tell you," I said, "because when I did try to tell you things, you made me feel like I was ungrateful. Or dramatic. Or like I was accusing you of being a bad mom." She flinched at that, just a little. "Well, that's how it sounded," she muttered. "You think it's easy? Being a mother? We didn't have guides and blogs and whatever you lot read now." "I'm not saying it was easy," I said. "I'm saying it hurt. And it still does." She stared at the table. Her thumb traced a small chip in the laminate, round and round. For a second, I thought maybe this was it, the moment. The one where she would look up and say, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean to hurt you." I could almost hear it in my head. Instead, she sighed. "You know, when I was your age, my mother slapped me if I cried," she said. "So compared to that, you had it good." That's all I'm saying. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, but it wasn't relief. It was more like defeat. "That's the thing," I said quietly. "You keep grading yourself on a curve where the only passing grade is, did not beat the child. And sure, you passed that. Gold star. But that doesn't mean everything else was fine." She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the tile. "I'm not going to sit here and listen to you tell me I was some kind of monster," she said, voice getting sharper. "Your father and I did our best. You never went hungry, you had clothes, you went to school. You should be grateful." There it was. The Holy Trinity. We did our best, you had food. Be grateful. "I am grateful," I said, and I meant it, annoyingly enough. "I know you did some things right, but two things can be true. You can have given me food and also ignored it when I was mentally falling apart." Her eyes were shiny now. Angry shiny, not sad shiny. "This is what that therapist of yours is putting in your head," she said. "Making you dig up every little thing I ever did wrong and blame me for your problems." I almost laughed. Nina had actually spent half our sessions trying to get me to stop automatically blaming myself for everything. "She's helping me understand that some of the ways I feel didn't come out of nowhere," I said. "That's all." "Well, maybe she should meet me before she decides I'm the villain," Mom snapped. "She hasn't called you a villain," I said. "You just did." She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head, reaching for her mug like the conversation was something she could swallow with lukewarm tea. I looked at her then. the lines around her mouth deeper than I remembered, the roots of her dyed hair showing gray, the hands that used to braid my hair too tight before school. I don't think she woke up every day thinking, how can I mess up my kids? I think she woke up thinking, how do I survive this day? And anything that threatened that, including my inconvenient emotions, got shut down. Understanding that doesn't magically erase the way my chest tightens every time she says, "You turned out fine though." "Why does it bother you so much?" she asked suddenly. "That I think you turned out fine?" I picked at a crumb on the table. "Because I didn't," I said. "I turned out functioning. I turned out good at pretending. I turned out able to hold myself together when I need to and then fall apart alone. That's not the same as fine." She was quiet for a long time. The radio switched to an ad about car insurance. Somewhere down the hall, the clock in the living room chimed the half hour, tinny and slightly off-key. "I don't know what you want me to say," she finally whispered. "I don't know either," I admitted. And that was the truest thing I'd said all afternoon. I wanted you to say you see it now, that you believe me, that I didn't imagine how hard it was. She pressed her lips together. A tiny part of me still waited, still hoped. "I can say I'm sorry if that's what you need," she said after a beat. And the way she said it made my stomach sink. "I'm sorry you feel that way, truly. But I can't go back and change anything. And I won't sit here and have you tell me I was a bad mother. I gave you everything I had." My therapist's voice popped into my brain, calm and steady. "You can't make her understand if she's not willing. You can only decide what you do with that." I felt tired, bone-deep tired. The kind of tired that isn't fixed by sleep. "I'm not saying you were all bad," I said again, because apparently I needed to convince her, or myself. I need you to stop dismissing my reality by saying I turned out fine. Because every time you say that, what I hear is, everything you went through wasn't that serious. And it was. For me." She sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. "You always were so sensitive," she murmured. It wasn't even aimed at me, not really. More like a comment to the air. I looked down at the orange bottle in my hand, at the little label with my name spelled wrong, at the instructions. "Take 1 tablet by mouth once daily." "I'm not going to keep arguing," I said, standing up slowly. My knees popped. "I just wanted you to know what's going on with me. You can think whatever you want about it." "You're leaving already?" she asked, glancing at the clock. "You just got here." I'd been there an hour and a half. Felt like both 5 minutes and 5 years. "I have things to do," I lied. "Laundry, groceries." She stood too, smoothing her cardigan. For a second, I saw something like panic flicker across her face. "Don't shut us out," she said. And there it was. Us, meaning her and Dad, even though Dad hadn't been part of this conversation at all. Family is all you have in the end. Sometimes family is the reason you need medication. Almost slipped out, but I swallowed it. I'm not that brave yet. Or that cruel. Instead I said, "I'm not shutting you out. I'm just taking care of myself differently now." She stepped forward and hugged me. I stiffened, then forced myself to hug back because my body still remembers being a kid who thought hugs meant everything was okay. Her perfume, some powdery floral thing, filled my nose. It used to be comforting. Now it just made me slightly nauseous. "I do love you, you know," she murmured into my shoulder. "Even if I don't always say the right thing." "I know," I said. And I do believe that, in her own way, that's part of what makes this so complicated. If she was a cartoon villain, this would be easier. On the drive home, my phone lit up with a text from her before I even got out of the neighborhood. "I hope you know I'm proud of you. You are fine. Don't let people convince you there's something wrong with you. Red heart." I stared at it at a red light, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed, deleted, typed again. "I'm not fine, Mom. That's the point." Deleted that. "Thanks. Talk later." Sent that. Now I'm sitting on my couch, laptop balanced on my knees, writing this on a throwaway Reddit account because I don't know what else to do with all of this. Half of me is wondering if I made a huge deal out of nothing. The other half is still that 13-year-old crying in the bathroom, praying someone will notice she can't breathe. I don't think my mom is evil. I think she's a woman who was handed her own unresolved trauma and no tools and did the best she could with what she had. But her best left me with a brain that needs alarms for medication and sticky notes on the mirror reminding me that my feelings aren't imaginary. She looks at that and says, "You turned out fine though." I look at it and think, if this is fine, what would not fine have looked like? I don't know what I want from posting this. Maybe I just want someone who isn't in my family to say, "Yeah, that would mess you up." Or maybe I want someone older to say, "We were like your mom once, and we eventually got it." For now, all I know is that tomorrow at 9 a.m., my alarm will buzz again. I'll take the little white pill, drink my coffee, and try to build a life that isn't held together by denial. Whether my mom ever understands that or not, I guess that's no longer the measure of whether I'm fine.